Hello and welcome to episode 20 of the Mad Madamel podcast. If you're a returning viewer, you can see I'm in a completely different location. And if you're a new viewer, my name is Mel and I record a crafting podcast which is primarily knitting, occasionally sewing and bits of other bits and bobs as well. So I live in Orkney, which is an island off the north coast of Scotland, with my husband and kitties and our small holding and in our greenhouse. So like I said, if you're a returning viewer, you can see I have a different background today. I'm not in the house, it's quite a dull day, and I decided to bring the camera into the greenhouse instead, and it means at the end, when I finish talking all the crafting stuff, then I can do a little kind of a mini tour of the greenhouse. There's not a lot of variety of what's in here, but there's a few varieties, so I can show you all that later on. If you can hear buzzing, I'm surrounded by several bumblebees. The main door of the greenhouse is open and they keep flying in to pollinate the runner beans behind me, which they are loving, and all the pumpkins and squashes down here because they're in full flower at the moment and the bees seem to love it. So if there's lots of buzzing, now you know. So first thing would be a finished object, and I am wearing it. I have finished my cardigan. This is a cardigan pattern done by Lecca of the Fibre Tales podcast and Instagram and such like. So I'm going to stand up and show you how it looks now that it is finished. Okay, I'm going to try and not shake the camera because the stone it is on moves when I move, and it moves the camera like so. I'll try not to do that too much. So it is a pieced cardigan which is supposed to be knit bottom up in pieces, but I'll get onto that in a moment. It has drop sleeves, which you can see here, with this design here. That's supposed to be quite a feather design, which is also down the side seams of the cardigan where the front and the back join together. The bottom rib and the cuffs have this 1x1 rib that's only knit rib on one side. I'm not sure if there's a proper name for that. Is it like a broken rib, or I'm not sure. I should probably look that up. And it also has a vertical rib button band, which I haven't got buttons on yet. I haven't decided yet on the buttons. So it is a v-neck cardigan, what I would kind of call a granddad style cardigan, and it is down to sort of my hip crease. I think the original pattern was ever so slightly shorter, but it has grown a little bit with blocking. The sleeves, the seam at the top is pretty invisible. It's pretty good actually. It has a little bit of short row shaping on the shoulders, and it's got quite long sleeves on this one as well. I'm going to sit back down so I can talk more about this. I think my chair just went through a hole in the paving slabs. Okay, so this is a picture, admittedly it's black and white, of the original pattern. And I don't know if, yeah, I have another photo here which shows, not very well in this light, the feather pattern on the side of the cardigan. Now mine goes in the opposite direction. On the original it has the feather design in these all the way up like this, and mine are instead of being a triangle, a pyramid shape, are a V shape up the side instead, because the original pattern is pieced and all sewn up at the end, and is also bottom up and knit flat, and I changed everything. I have a cardigan that looks almost identical to the original, but I completely changed how I constructed the garment. So I had a limited amount of yarn to work with here. The yarn I used was a sock yarn, and it was Regia Tweed 6 ply, in the colourway 17, which is this kind of biscuity colour with little brown tweedy flecks. It is a DK weight yarn, and I knit this on a 4mm needle. The pattern called for US wool kanak, and it was knit on a 3.5mm needle. Now, I believe the US wool is a DK weight, and when I did a gauge swatch for this yarn on a 3.5mm, it was just going to be too dense and too tight, so I don't know how that would actually translate to the US wool. So this is why I did this on a 4mm, and I'm a loose knitter anyway, so 3.5mm and being tight, I don't know how the original one would have come out. But instead of being a 23 stitches to 36 rounds gauge, I come up at a 21 stitch and 26 round gauge. So I just made sure that I accounted for that when I chose which size that I knit. And like I said, I knit this on a 4mm needle. I only had 450 grams of DK weight in this yarn, and all I have left is this. In fact, if I'd known I was going to have this much left, I probably would have knit one more round before I started the rib, because I don't like having leftovers that I can't do an awful lot with. I could maybe get away with making the toes on a pair of DK weight socks with this, though I suspect I might not even have enough for that. So this, I don't know what I'm going to do with this. But because I was limited on the amount of yarn I had, I was worried about running out mid-project, especially as it has such long sleeves on the original design. So instead of knitting it pieced bottom up, I knit it all in one, top down, kind of. Yeah, I did, because the original pattern has you knit the back of the cardigan and the two fronts, and the sleeves are actually knit top down, so I didn't change a huge amount in the sleeve. I don't know what, I've got something tickling my nose, to apologise. So what I did was I reversed all the instructions basically, and consequently the design, the feather design on the sides would be going in the opposite direction, because I couldn't get the pattern to work in reverse. So I just literally knit the feather pattern as stated, but it's obviously going the opposite direction. The other thing I changed is once I got down to the underarm on the back, I picked up for the fronts at the top and I knit those down as well, and then joined the whole cardigan in, not in the round, but joined the fronts and the back together and knit them in one back and forth, rather than carrying on and knitting the 4 different pieces that I would have to seam up later. The other thing I changed was, after having experienced knitting a button band on my Bly cardigan, which I showed on the previous podcast, I liked being able to knit the button band on at the same time as knitting the cardigan. The Bly cardigan I knit a Garter button band, so that wasn't really a problem. I just put an extra stitch marker in and added the extra stitches for the button band. The button band on this one is supposed to be, it's a vertical rib, but you're supposed to knit this really thin button band back and back and back and back and back, this rib all the way, this huge long length, and then stitch it on and hope it fits. And it just seemed like a lot of extra work. So instead what I did was, when I picked up for the shoulders, what I did was, so if I started on the right hand side, I picked up this center stitch, or just to the side of the center stitch at the back, and I knit, whilst picking up the back of the collar, I knit that part in the rib. And then when I picked up the stitches here and I started knitting down, I just carried on knitting the vertical button band as I went back and forth across here. And it worked out really well. Another thing I changed on that was, it has a, what do you call it? a I'm gonna have to look at the pattern because I can't remember. It has an I-cord edging, or it's supposed to have an I-cord edging down the edge of the button band. When I started doing it, it was so tight on that edge that it was distorting the cardigan. And I noticed when I looked on some previous people's projects for this that the front of the cardigan rides up quite a bit because the edge is so much tighter than the rest of the cardigan, and it just looked strange and it kind of hung sticking out, which with Laka's that's a needle. With Laka's original design, it looked okay on her because she was quite heavily pregnant at the time, so your bump makes it stick out. But when other people had done it who weren't expecting, it just made the front not only ride up but also flip out at the front as well, which I didn't want. So instead I pulled that little bit back that I'd already done along the back collar, and instead of doing an I-cord edging on it, I just slipped the last stitch on each row. So every other row on the edge would be slipped, and it made a structured solid edge, but it didn't shrink the length either. It just kept it at the same length as the rest of the cardigan, which worked really well as well, which is also what I did on the Bly cardigan with the garter stitch, which would be very stretchy too. What else did I change? Well, I knit the cardigan as short as I would be happy to have the cardigan before the rib, and then I stopped and I left the cardigan on a cable needle in case I would run out of yarn or get close to running out of yarn by knitting the sleeves. So I paused and then I knit the sleeves. I knit one of them down, worked out how much yarn I'd used and realised I would have plenty, and I knit them both to a nice long length. If I'd been short of yarn I would have made them 3/4, but I realised I had plenty. I knit the sleeves and then picked up the cable, reattached the needle tips to the cable and carried on knitting as far as I could before I knew I would have enough yarn for the 1.5 inches of rib that's on the bottom of the cardigan. And consequently I have a cardigan that I would say it's a smidgen longer than the original pattern, but I think it was probably about bang on before I blocked it. It's just ever so slightly loosened up as it has been blocked, which is great. It's very comfortable. The arm decreases I changed slightly. They were very much straight at the upper arm and then tapered quite quickly from then onwards. I've put a little bit more of shaping in the upper arm and made it a bit more gradual on the forearm sections, and I just did a stretchy bind off on the cuffs and on the bottom of the cardigan as well. It is very comfortable. I do like a DK weight cardigan. I think this is the second DK weight cardigan I've knit for myself. The first one being the gnarled oak cardigan that I knit, although that was definitely on a denser gauge, which I'm kind of regretting, but there is no way I'm ripping that back, as it was my first garment. But I do like this looser gauge. It's not loose. I mean, when I hold it up, you can't. It's definitely not a loose gauge by any means, but it's warm because it's DK weight, but it's not uncomfortably stiff. I've knit a couple of garments that I've regretted the density of the gauge that I've used, but this one definitely not. And I can hear lambs outside. Either the farmer's in the field beside me, which is highly embarrassing when I'm recording in here, or they're at the top of the field and they've just called the sheep up, because that's a little embarrassing. There we go. Okay, so that is my finished object and the first object to show you, and I only have 2 others to show you this episode, which is great, so we should be reasonably short. Okay, my second object and my first whip to show you is my almost finished Salem sweater. Let me just show you. You can see it's almost done. I have completed both cable sleeves, thank goodness. I mentioned before I am not the biggest fan of cabling, I just find it so slow. It interrupts my flow and I have to read the chart so much when I just want to knit. So the cable pattern is lovely. It's really nice and you can just see the bubbles. They're not too prominent. I don't like big bubbles. The little ones, the little bubbles are fine. I've done a nice long 3-inch 1x1 twisted rib cuff. It has short roll shaping in the back. Both sleeves completed and we are down to the rib, or almost the rib. I can't remember if I need to knit any more on it. Do I need to knit any more? I think I'm up to the rib. The yarns I'm using is a mixture, and I'm going to struggle to show these a little, and now I'm really going to tickle because this has got alpaca in it. I am helical knitting. That's knitting alternating skeins of 3 different main colours. The first one being this one, which is Bling Bling by Old Maiden Ant, and it is beautiful. It's burgundies and greens and blues and oranges, and with the main colour of burgundy. It's really, really pretty. It's also on a gold sparkle, gold stellina merino nylon base, which I'm not sure if it's showing on camera, but we shall see in editing. The second colour I'm using is my own hand-dyed, botanical dyed yarn on gold sparkle again, and it is in the colourway Ruby. Again, it's a burgundy colour. And because I only had one skein of the gold sparkle on Ruby in my stash, but I had Ruby on non-sparkle base, I'm also using a skein of that too. I'm wondering if I could have gotten away. No, I couldn't have gotten away with 2 skeins. If I had, I would have had to shorten the sweater. So definitely needed the 3 colours. The yarn I'm using holding alongside is this yarn, and it is Drops Alpaca, I believe. Yep, it is this one, Drops Alpaca, in colourway 3969, which I think is Burgundy Mix. It's this rich burgundy with its kind of got little bluey flecks that are not overly blue. If you look, they look blue, but the yarn itself doesn't kind of look like it's blue speckles, if you know what I mean. It just tones it down to a cooler burgundy colour. The design is the Salem sweater by Tristan Molina of Dragon Hoard Designs, and her original design, it is very oversized. I think the recommended positive ease is 12 to 15 inches, which is a lot. It makes for a very boxy sweater, and it looks great on her and on a lot of the other projects, but that is just so much extra ease for me. I just wouldn't be comfortable. I would feel like I was wearing a poncho, and I'm not really into huge oversized boxy sweaters. I like my Bly cardigan, which is oversized, but it has shaping and it's a cardigan. Boxy sweaters are fine, but it's just a little bit too much ease for me. So I've knit this with, I think there's about, I don't know, maybe it's 4 inches of positive ease, something like that. At the most, somewhere between 2 to 4 inches anyway. More of a fitted sweater, but without being fitted. It just kind of hugs your curves ever so slightly. The original design is knit on a 2.75mm needle at a 23 stitch 30 rounds gauge. Now hers uses a fingering weight held double with a lace weight mohair silk blend. Oh, hello Bumblebee. Mine, I'm using a fingering weight, but the Drops Alpaca is more of a fingering weight than it's different. It's not a lace weight at all, it's a fingering weight. So when they're held together, it makes a much thicker yarn, obviously. So I've gone up to a 5mm needle, 18 stitches, 24 rows, and I've knitted the, I don't know if I've knit the smallest size. I shall check. I have knit the yes, I have knit the smaller size to account for that. Whoops, nearly lost my camera and my wall. To account for my smaller, to account for the larger gauge and this less amount of ease that I wanted, and it's worked out very, very well. I'm really, really pleased with it. The only thing I would change, if anything, would be how high the neckline is, but it's high on the original design anyway, so it maybe could have been just a little bit lower. It's not high, it's definitely more of a crew neck. I like slightly lower neckline, but it's fine, it works with the design itself. If I see if I have a photo of the original design here, I do. Try not to show the instructions on camera. There we go. There we go. And there is a picture of the original design. You can just see the cabling on the sleeves. You can't really see much of the design there because I don't print out all the photos for my printouts. So yes, that is it so far. I have stopped once I got to the, again, the minimum length I want before the rib, not because I'm worried about running out of yarn, although I did stop a bit further up than that. You could probably see there where I stopped before, to make sure I had enough yarn for the sleeves. So I stopped, knit the sleeves like I did with this cardigan, and then picked up and carried on knitting the bottom. But my main concern was, with it being an alpaca blend, the secondary yarn I'm using, was it expanding too much after blocking and stopping at a length which I really loved, and then after it being blocked it being so much longer. So instead what I've done is I've stopped a little bit short, and then I've blocked the sweater as is, not super well, but I've, you know, give it a good block and laid it flat, so that now that I can try it on and see when I want to stop for the rib. And I'm pretty sure I don't need to knit any more length on that. I'm just going to knit a couple of, I think what I decided the other day was I'm going to knit about 1 inch of the rib and then try it again and just see if I want to knit another 1 or another 2 inches of rib on the bottom before casting off. And I'm pretty sure I'll have a bit of yarn left over, maybe enough to knit a pair of socks with down the line, so I know I'm not going to run out of yarn too. So that is my first whip, and the second one you haven't seen before. Okay, so the last couple of weeks I've been itching to cast new things on. I've cast on 3 new things, but 2 of them I'm not really actively working on, so I'll have to show them next time. One of them, I frogged back what I had already done on my Marled Magic sweater by Stephen West. I wasn't happy with my secondary yarn that I was marling with. I'd only done 1 and a bit panels on 1 and a bit segments on that. It's very segmented, oversized cardigan, sweater. But I wasn't happy, so I frogged that back and I cast on with a different marling yarn, and I've just gone with an undyed silk mohair, but I've only done that much and I haven't worked on it in the last 2 weeks, so there's not much point in showing that. The second one is a new design from Ellie of Skindeer, and it is the red currant summer top, part of her new summer collection, and I've only knit, again, about that much, and I'm actually knitting that one to the pattern. I'm actually knitting it bottom up, surprise surprise, but again I've done very little on it, so there's not much point in showing that either. I can show that next time. But what else I cast on, I have been working on quite a bit, and it's tearing along. And that is a design, another design by Andy Satterland. I really love her patterns. This one has been in my queue and printed out and ready to go for quite some time. And it is the Heti Cardigan, which is a vintage shape lace cardigan with 3/4 sleeves. It is knit all in one, as in it is knit from top down to the underarm, shoulders picked up, knit down to the underarm and all joined together, and then you pick up the stitches around the armhole for these sleeves and knit those top down too. So I don't have to do any adaptations for this, which is fabulous. I really enjoy her patterns. I've knit her Orkney sweater with a spiderweb design, colourwork design, and her Ichabod cardigan, which is more of the grandad style with the pumpkin ribs shaping in it as well. I really like the designs. I'm knitting this with the recommended needles, with the recommended gauge, everything. It is a 15 stitch gauge, 24 row, knit on with Aran weight yarn and knit on a 5mm needle, and I'm keeping that all the same. The yarn I'm using is from my drop stash, which is Drops Alaska, colourway 11, which is this bright scarlet red, and I've made a lot of progress. I'm kind of struggling. I'm trying not to put my project bags down on the ground in here, so I've got like a fold up chair over there that I'm putting them on, so if I keep reaching forward, that's why. I have nearly completed the body before the bottom rib. That's how much I have done. There we go. It's quite a short cropped cardigan. I'm going to be trying this on when I finish this pattern repeat. The lace work is working up really nicely. It's an Aran weight yarn, so it's a very warm cardigan, so this is really going to work well for spring and autumn. The lace design is a 8-row pattern repeat, and I've just done, which row am I on? Am I on purl row, knit row? I'm on knit row. So I've just done the first row of my final repeat according to the pattern. Now I noticed on hers she has the body knit down as far as spot on her waistline, and then the rib comes just below your waistline, so it kind of it fits. It has waist shaping down to the waist, and then you have 3 inches of bottom rib on there. So I will try this on when I finish this final pattern repeat. If it's reached my waistline, because I suspect I need another, maybe another pattern repeat, I don't know, I will try it on. If it's reached my waist, fab. If it hasn't, I will just do one more pattern repeat without the decreases, because I don't think it'll want to go any narrower. I'm not sure. So I've got half a dozen more rows to knit on this tonight, and then I will switch to a slightly longer cable so I can try it on properly. I have tried this on, but so I can get a proper idea. And then it's just knit the rib on the bottom. And then we have ribbing to knit for the button band and for the collar. I believe it's a 2x2 rib on the button band, but I will probably change that to 1x1 rib with such a chunky yarn, because the bottom rib is 1x1 rib in any case, and I believe it is on the sleeves too, so I will just keep with that for the button band, and I think it is for the collar. The sleeves I believe are just picked up, and the lace pattern is all the way down the sleeves as well, and they are 3/4 sleeves. So this shouldn't take very long at all. I'm not entirely sure which will be finished first. The Salem sweater with its 3 inches of 1x1 twisted rib, which I'm not so much looking forward to in... Although I'm knitting that, I have been knitting that on a 5mm needle, and I'm knitting this on a 5mm needle. So in theory, it shouldn't take much longer to do that than it will the rib on this. That's a point. Anyway, I'm not sure. But I'm loving this. I'm loving how quick it's working up and how pretty the lace works knitting up. And you can tell my cat likes to sit on my knee when I'm knitting in front of the TV, because... oh, that's my hair. But there are cat hairs in my knitting. Part of having a kitty cat. So that's all 3 projects that are currently being worked on to show you, and that didn't take too long at all, which is excellent. So now I can do life stuff if you still want to hang around for that. Okay, so what's been happening? To be honest, not a huge amount. We live a pretty quiet life. No, that's not, I shouldn't even say that. Touch wood. We live a relatively quiet life, and we don't leave the property a huge amount, except for we have a self-catering accommodation that I have to take care of as well. So it's been mostly focused on that side of my business, and working on some yarny dyeing stuff, although not so much the last couple of weeks. I've had a bit of a break, to be honest, and just needed a rest from everything. Summers tend to be quite busy around here. Lots of gardening stuff going on. I'm going to show you what we've got in here, and yeah, there's a huge amount to share, to be honest. Nothing super exciting anyway, but I will show you around the greenhouse now if you care to see that. Okay, so we'll start here. This is the main doorway. My husband built this through last summer when we were in lockdown, and he was furloughed for 5 months, and he built this huge greenhouse. I think it's 27 feet long, I think, by, I don't know, 3, 6, 9 feet wide, something like that. It is in an Anna White design. She does different plans for different DIY projects, and hers is half this depth, and we basically made 2 that join together in the middle, so it's twice as long or thereabouts. And we also didn't make it quite so tall as well. We brought the height down. The sides on hers are, if I come back outside, I think they're 3 foot before the plastic, and ours is only 2 feet, I believe. 18 inches? I can't remember. Anyway, they're a lot shorter. We have high winds. We do not need extra height. So we have a lot growing in here. We have a lot of tomatoes and a lot of squash and pumpkins and various different types of beans and such like. So I'm going to show you what we've got. So as you come in, we've got some tomatoes growing here. These are cherry tomatoes. We have some little flowers coming on, and these are I think all our seeds have come from the Real Seed Company, which is a company in Wales. These ones are they're not entirely sure. They think it's some variant of Gardener's Delight from Ireland, but they suspect it's some sort of cross variety, and they're not entirely sure, but it makes some nice sweet little cherry tomatoes. The squashes in this first bed here, we have a couple of butternut squash plants at the back, which you can't see because they're all buried, but we have a couple of butternut squash plants, and all the rest of these plants in here are what's called candy roaster. They are a heritage American variety. I've never had them before, never eaten them, but they look really interesting. We have some little baby ones coming on. We have a lot of baby ones coming on. Oh, hang on, that's a male flower. We have lots of little baby ones coming on there, but they grow fairly big. They grow probably, from what I can tell, maybe it's about 8-9 inches long, maybe a little bit bigger. They look the colour of a butternut squash, as in that creamy apricot colour, but they have little green ends on them, and they're more of a, I don't know what shape you call it, like a shape, like a straight banana, but fatter. Yeah. But I'm assuming they're very similar to a butternut, but we shall see. So I'm interested to see how they come on, and we have them growing all the way along to this middle divider here. We have quite a few fruits coming on, lots of male flowers. Let's just hope our growing season is long enough for them to ripen. The beans growing on this wall are Trail of Tears. They are a French bean, another American heritage variety I believe, and they've got purple flowers that have just started flowering. And no beans yet, a little bit early. These were actually ahead of the other beans when we first planted them, but they've took a little bit longer to get to where they are, and they're running rampant. Tomatoes over here are, let me try and remember, these are Moscovich, an Eastern European variety, and they're, I think, they're either a beefsteak, like a small beefsteak, quite a meaty one, or a plum. I'm sure they're supposed to be a plum, but they don't look very plum shaped to me, but we shall see. Further along, we've got more of the Muscovich tomatoes. And here we have a Scandinavian heritage variety of peas, climbing peas. The name eludes me, but if I remember them, I'll put them on the screen. And we have peas coming along. Just got to wait for these to fatten up now. The squash at this end are Hubbard squash. We have quite a few fruits and one very large fruit. I show you with my hand. That's quite a big fruit so far. Further along here we have jack-o'-lantern ones. John kept some seeds from a jack-o'-lantern pumpkin from last Halloween and grew them. And we have a few fruits in here, including one really big. If I put it away, you can see it's quite big already. At this end over here we have our runner beans. These are Moonlight. They are a self-fertile, self-pollinating variety, which is great for in the greenhouse. And they're this beautiful coloured flower. They're kind of buttery yellow ones and white ones. They're very pretty, and the bees absolutely love them. And we have a third variety of tomato at this end, and this is Amish paste. That's it. They're another American one, and they are quite a big meaty tomato. Maybe these are the plum style ones, a big meaty plum style, and the other ones are regular ones. I can't remember, but these are another meaty variety which I'll be using for things like sauces. Over this side, less stuff over here, but we have some more. These are not doing so well because they don't get quite as much light from this side. That is south, but these ones have had a little bit of shade in the bottom in the beginning, so it's taken them a little while to catch up. We have some strawberries in here. We have strawberries outside as well, but we have strawberries in here, and I've had several strawberries to nibble on in here when I've come in. We've also got some more squash over here. These are seeds that I saved from a small squash from the supermarket. In there we've got little squash on there. I like the small ones you get from Lidl's in October time. They're like a streaky yellow squash. I like them roasted, so I saved the seeds, and that's what's in this bed over here. Here we've got some sugar snap peas. Just need to wait. I had one of these the other day, forgetting they were actually sugar snap and need to fatten up, but they were still nice, so we've got to wait for those to plump up. We have a couple of cucumber plants on this tripod here. They've not done very well, but we have got some flowers coming on now, which is great. More of the Muscovich tomatoes. And over here we have our courgette bed. So we've got some yellow ones. We had some for lunch yesterday, the bigger ones, more yellow ones, and then these pale green ones down here too. And at the end we have a stray cabbage and a stray brassica that I can't remember what it is, and another cherry tomato as well. And then John's just put a couple of sarking boards to make some trestling for all his various cuttings and small plants. So we've got some like peppers, some more strawberries that he's took cuttings, and spade plants, because you've always got spade plants. Once you've got one, you've always got babies. An orange tree, geraniums and fuchsia cuttings, and I keep kicking buckets and such like. And yeah, so that's it. That is our greenhouse this year. It's kind of like a jungle in here. So thank you for watching, and I hope to see you on the next episode.